So welcome to our presentation today on healthy eating, stress-reducing foods for wellness, and how we're going to spend this next time together. Oops, we're having a few technical difficulties here. All right, thanks for hanging in there with us. So our objectives for today will be to talk about the challenges we face in creating healthy meals, the relationship of stress to meal planning, understanding emotional eating, and then we'll get down to kind of some nuts and bolts of tips for healthy eating. I'm Karen Merrill. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, EAP provider, and trainer for Alliance. And like most of us, I face the challenges of being mindful of what I consume in relationship to stress and wellness. So this is always good information for all of us. What we'll find today as we go through this is that there are also some polling questions. So to make the webinar more participatory, I'll be asking you some questions. You can vote for them, and then we'll talk about what the audience decides. Then at the end, we'll have availability for questions and answers as we go about closing the presentation. So what gets in the way of healthy eating? Certainly time is probably what we vote for first. When we were kids, many of us had stay-at-home moms. I know I did, that made dishes from scratch, and this was her job. She was a stay-at-home mom, ran the house, made the meals. For most of us now, our lives are harried, and it's not quite like that. You really wouldn't be attending this training if you were a stay-at-home mom. You've got lots of things to balance, and we find that we pass so many fast food places on our way home that market to our kids, to our taste buds. It can be fast and easy and an appealing option to meal preparation. Another thing is the cost. It can be expensive to buy fresh fruits and vegetables, particularly if we're trying to buy foods that are organic, which we believe are better for us. So it can seem much more reasonable to buy frozen meals and fast food rather than going into the meal planning, the preparation, the cleanup, all of those things. Can feel stressful. We can feel guilty as well that we don't have the time to be putting into our family. And so what we do is we believe that we satisfy their needs by giving them something that's more immediately appealing to them. And then, of course, there's stress, something that is a byword to most of our lives now. And we'll spend a pretty good amount of time on what causes stress and then the relationship of that to our eating practices. What causes stress? If we were in the room together, I would be asking you that and be asking for your responses. Certainly fears cause stress. And there are physical fears and psychological fears. Physical fears can include that dangerous, nervous-making traffic that we encounter on our commute in and on our commute home when we're tired and we want to get home quickly. A crowded elevator in the office building can cause fear and a feeling kind of an unrest. A dark, deserted parking garage can cause fear. And then the psychological fears that are associated with stress include a fear that we're not going to be able to complete our tasks at home or complete all the things that we have to do at work as well. We can feel like we're afraid we're not going to be able to manage our finances, which causes a fear. We can fear the relationship to legal problems, or a fear that we're not going to be able to support our families, both emotionally and financially. So fear causes stress. Uncertainty causes stress. In each person's life, there are uncertainties that cause stress. We cannot control everything, even though we wish we could. Changing jobs, moving to a new city, starting or ending a relationship. These are just some of the changes that cause uncertainty in our life. And often, when change occurs, stress piles up because of all the unknowns of a situation. Life is always filled with uncertainty. We're not going to be able to seal off that possibility. And it's disconcerting to not know what's going to happen in our lives, particularly when our control of the situation is impeded by the government, illness, interest rates, etc., etc. Being uncertain about events in our life causes us to feel we're out of control. This feeling of loss of control is what causes stress. And I think that mere statement resonates for all of us. When we feel things are out of our control, we're stressful about it because we are most comfortable when we have control. Our attitudes can cause stress. This is kind of the, temperamental glass half full, glass half empty. A positive or negative attitude influences our reaction to stressful situations. For example, if you feel your job is worthwhile and satisfying, we may see the problems we encounter as challenges. Seen in this way, they can become motivating. But if we resent our situation or feel stuck, similar experiences can create stress. And stress then becomes frustrating rather than motivating. Have you ever heard the expression, perception is everything, reality doesn't really matter? Well, our perceptions cause stress as well. Depending on what has happened to us in the past, which colors how we see our present and our future, and how we view resources available to us to meet life demands, our stress levels affected. The degree of stress that we experience can be greatly affected by our perception of our ability to deal with it. How we perceive any given situation will determine whether or not it's going to be stressful. So what we're saying here also is that we have some control over how stressful that given situation can be based on how we perceive it and then how we work on those perceptions. Perceptions can be broken down in the following ways. Our own self-perception, this is kind of our sense of personal competency, our self-esteem, our values, our needs, our personal resources, past experiences, how we feel our health can combat stressful situations, material resources, our finances, our housing, those kinds of things. And probably a key on this list is our people resources, others that can assist us when we need to reach out to others, and that feeling of not being alone. Where is my safety net? That's an example of that. So we're going to ask our first polling question kind of before we talk about this last bullet point. And that one is, true or false, what is your opinion or belief? Both positive and negative changes cause stress. True or false? So now, if you would cast your vote. Then we'll give you a couple of minutes, and then Brenda will tell us what the results are.
Okay, it looks like 98% agree that it's true, and we have 3% of false votes.
Okay, so most people agree that both positive and negative stress, most negative changes cause stress. Absolutely true. All change produces stress. Even those changes that we choose, for example, marriage generally is a positive change, but it still requires a period of adjustment, and that can be stressful. Even a vacation that we look forward to and plan for can be stressful. The arrangements have to be made. We have to plan to be out of work. We might worry about the workload once we get back to work. We might even worry that we won't take advantage of all the activities available to us while we're on our trip. So even exciting events cause stress. Negative changes aren't as difficult to identify as stress-producing. These are the situations that you'd rather not occur. For example, economic recession, financial crisis, loss of a valuable possession. Change demands our adjustment to any particular situation, whether we want it or not. Developmental changes are big changes that even though we plan, for example, a pregnancy, a birth, the aging process, it's still stressful, even though anticipated. A few other things, changes that can cause stress. Work and business change due to technological advancements. You know, I'm a baby boomer, and I have to say that there have been times when I was in the workplace and all this technology is advancing. And that kind of change would cause stress for me to know, am I going to be able to keep up? Am I going to be able to learn it? Will I still be valuable? So these major changes in our work causes stress. Personal achievement or disappointment causes stress. Illness or death. Major changes in our financial state. Even a major purchase. We buy a house. Those kinds of things. They all can cause stress. Changes that even are anticipated or not anticipated. So polling question number 2, without stress, would we lose our energy and overall enthusiasm for life? True or false? Let the voting begin. Okay. Brenda, what do you got?
It looks like we have 61% have voted true and 39% have voted false.
Okay. So the answer to this is that stress is a natural part of life, and we need a certain amount of stress. Without stress, we actually would lose our energy and zest. It does kind of energize us. But when we have too much, we look for ways to cope that might not be very helpful. And what that can be is that we turn to unhealthy foods to cope. The fact is that sugar, salt, and fat immediately relieve some of these stress symptoms, whether they're coming from fear or perception or change or any of these things. They do relieve it by a uptick in serotonin. The truth is that what happens after that, and I know I've experienced it, and probably most of us have, is that there then is a drop in blood sugar and a feeling of lethargy. So the rebound ends up making us feel worse. So the relationship of stress to eating is us wanting to find some coping mechanisms to kind of impede that immediately feeling of discomfort, but sometimes we pick those that are not the most helpful. And this really brings us to kind of understanding what emotional eating is. So we can understand then that eating and food work to what we call anesthetize emotional distress. And it acts in two ways. We can eat to keep some feelings down. So if you think about that you're feeling sad or angry or anxious and you're wanting to keep those feelings from coming out, then the eating is actually stuffing down those feelings. And actually, food is the most legal and quickly available mood-altering drug there is, and it's instantaneous. So some interesting research is that if we're angry, we may choose crunchy foods because that kind of relieves that sense of anger. If we're depressed, we might look to sugary foods, which triggers a release of serotonin, which temporarily at least creates a feeling of well-being. Anxious, we say soft and sweet, maybe a bowl of ice cream or something of that nature. And stress, we go for salty stuff. I think we probably go for salty and crunchy, but that just may be my own experience. But that's kind of some interesting tidbits about that. So what emotions are we actually eating to avoid or to create? We're trying to avoid or numb feelings of boredom, loneliness, fear, worry, anger, grief, depression, having nothing to do and opening the refrigerator or the cupboard, feeling lonely and trying to cope in some way, and turning to something that we think might be nurturing, but actually, as we've talked about, gives us a rebound. We can also be seeking by eating. We can be seeking a neurochemical triggered sensation, a sense of well-being, comforting associations with early food experiences. It's why they call certain foods comfort foods. They don't do that for nothing, but we might associate a bowl of mashed potatoes or milk and cookies as a positive memory from childhood. And those things can be something that we seek when we're reacting to stressful situations. So we've all talked about stress management tools in different ways, relaxation. We know that stress management, and certainly many of you in the fields that you work in know that stress management is a powerful tool for wellness. Lots of evidence out there that too much pressure is not just a mood killer. Evidence that people under constant stress are more vulnerable to everything from colds to high blood pressure to heart disease. And I know from personal experience that if I've gone through a particularly stressful situation, I'll come down with something. I'll get a cold. I may, if there's a flu bug around. And that's because the stress has weakened the immune system's ability to fight. So what we're going to be looking at today, although we know that there are many stress management tools, is a strategy to eat stress-fighting foods in our ability to enhance wellness. How do stress-busting foods work? Foods can fight stress in several ways. Comfort foods, like a comforting bowl of warm oatmeal, boosts our serotonin level, that calming brain chemical. Other foods, can reduce levels of cortisol and adrenaline. And we know that these are stress hormones that get triggered that can take a toll on our body over time. Finally, a nutritious diet counteracts the impact of stress by shoring up our immune system and lowering blood pressure. And what we try to do and get an understanding of is that if these stress-fighting foods are part of our daily habits, then once a stress experience occurs, we have more ammunition to fight that. So all good information to keep in our kind of repertoire of stress-fighting tools. So here comes another polling question. All carbs, both simple and complex, raise serotonin and make us feel better. So if you would vote your opinion for this one, we'll tally it up and see what people think. Okay, Brenda.
So this one is really close. We have 50% voting true and 50% of participants voting false.
Wow, interesting. Well, then 50% of you are going to be very surprised that the answer to this question is true. All carbs, both simple and complex, raise serotonin. So, and this is good that there is a perception that only those good complex carbs give you that feeling, but the simple carbs do it as well. Of course, the problem with the simple carbs is that although it's an immediate feeling of well-being, the results over time are much more harmful, both to our body and also our emotional state. So a steady supply of the feel-good chemical is much more productive when it's complex carbs. For example, oatmeal or whole grain breakfast cereals, whole grain breads and pastas. Complex carbs not only raise our serotonin, but they help us feel more balanced by stabilizing our blood sugar levels. So it's really a good habit to begin to, read, and you may do this now, but read ingredients on food packages to really know how much whole grains you're getting, which makes a difference in the way we feel. And I think also being mindful and observant about the relationship of when do I eat and then feel better, and when do I eat and feel lethargy or a drop in blood sugar is all good information to be aware of. So simple carbs, what are simple carbs? Simple carbs are the things that are probably most likely, advertised and promoted. It's the donuts, Voodoo Donuts, a place in Portland that, has very attractive donuts that people like. Those are simple carbs. Sugars, soda are simple carbs. So what they do is they provide a short-term relief of stress, reduced irritability, but then they're digested quickly. You feel better in the short term, but then in the long term you feel much worse. If you have a real sweet tooth, and there are times when I absolutely crave sweets, turning to fruits, juicy fruits, and fruits that are high in vitamin C and other things can make us feel better and still give us sugar. And then there's also some candies that are sweetened with fruit juice, which is something to be on the lookout for if you have a sweet tooth. One thing, and I'm sure there's lots of publicity about, that we really need to steer away from are things that are sweetened with corn syrup. It's harsh on the body and has a negative impact. So keeping that in mind. And if you have kids that, you know, are marketed to, then having them steer clear of simple carbs can be very beneficial in the long term. So things that are good for us, things that satisfy a sweet tooth and are also good for us. Oranges certainly make the list for their wealth of vitamin C. Studies suggest that reducing the levels of what vitamin C does is help us reduce levels of stress hormones as it strengthens the immune system. So research also tells us that if you have a stressful event coming up, you might want to consider taking vitamin C supplements. In one study, blood pressure and cortisol levels returned to normal more quickly when people took 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C before a stressful task. So, and we need to keep in mind, I think some of us, our stomachs or whatever, are more sensitive to vitamin C, but just knowing that some amount of it can help restore us after a stressful event. Blueberries. Blueberries have the highest antioxidant capacity of all commonly consumed fruits and vegetables. They're high not only in vitamin C, but also in fiber. And fiber regulates our blood sugar levels. So drastic changes in blood sugar can cause us to have mood swings, which contributes to anxiety. But the fiber does regulate that as well. So not only are they good for you vitamin C-wise, but they also help in other ways. And towards the end, we're going to be going through a list of what we call superfoods, and blueberries also are known to help us combat dementia and ward off Alzheimer's. So it's a really good thing to have in our diet. Just as a kind of a prelude, dark leafy green veggies are also those that are high in vitamin C and high in that fiber that we need. Spinach. Popeye never let stress get the best of him, and maybe that's because of all the magnesium in the spinach. Magnesium helps regulate our cortisol levels, which tends to get more depleted when we're under pressure. Also, too little magnesium may trigger headaches and fatigue, which combats the effect of stress. 1 cup of spinach goes a long way toward replenishing our magnesium stores. If we're not a spinach eater, some cooked soybeans or filet of salmon and some other fish that we'll talk about are high in magnesium. Kale and broccoli are great stress reducers, high in potassium, which is especially good in calming our nerves, and also high in fiber, which controls the blood sugar and aids in digestion. It's interesting how the dark leafy greens have become more and more popular. I grew up, and I'm not sure there was anything available but iceberg lettuce. And then we started getting romaines and all these other arugula and dark green veggies, and now kale seems to be the big thing. And some people like it and some people don't, but it's definitely good for you. So here's polling question 4. What food in the following list in comparable portions has the least amount of vitamin C? Not the most, but the least amount of vitamin C. Red bell peppers, kale, oranges, strawberries, or cauliflower. Which food has the least vitamin C? Tell us what you think. Brenda?
Okay,
what does the group say?
it looks like we have 3% of participants voting for kale, 11% for strawberries, 7% for oranges, 75% for cauliflower, and 8% for red peppers.
Okay. So this is a surprise. And I asked actually before we started this. I had given Brenda the polling questions, but I hadn't given her the answers. So I said, what do you think about these questions? And she said, I'm really not sure about the one about the vitamin C. She says, I'm sure that one of the ones that have the most vitamin C are oranges. Well, I've got a surprise. That of this list, oranges have the least amount of vitamin C. So we think about, having a cold and drinking orange juice, or, feeling revived because of the vitamin C in an orange. But actually, the other items on this list have more vitamin C than oranges do. So it's just, it's education, and really it's about balance of the things and being mindful of what we include in our diet. So now we're going to move forward. So another thing, to keep the cortisol and adrenaline in check, and remember those are those hormones that get triggered with stress, we need to make friends with fatty fish. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fish like salmon and tuna, think mackerel or trout or other ones, can prevent surges in stress hormones and protect us against heart disease. What is recommended is, just for a steady supply, is to aim to eat 3 ounces of fatty fish at least twice a week. 3 ounces really isn't very much, so it's not a hard goal to attain to. And it's good. And the other thing about fatty fish, and kind of, fats in general, I think, is that they're fats that are really good for us. These are good for us. Olive oil is good for us. Things that we'll talk about, nuts, later on in the presentation. So, when people became mindful about eating, and people go on diets and they think they need to eliminate all fat, it's not the good fats they need to eliminate. It's the fats that, McDonald's uses, or those things that are really artery clogging, instead of the fats that help us. And then again, it's all about quantity and balance to keep in mind. So this is interesting about black tea. And this was actually something that I was not aware of before doing research for the training, is that black tea can actually help us recover from stressful events. So a study compared people who drank 3 cups of tea daily for 6 weeks with people who drank like a tea like placebo. And the real tea drinkers reported feeling calmer and had lower levels of cortisol after stressful situations. So I would say if you have a caffeine sensitivity and you were going to do this, that the tea would be earlier in the day than later. And I think we all kind of react to caffeine in different ways. The other thing, which is a pretty well-known fact, is that green tea has antioxidant properties. And also green tea, I think, helps us focus more clearly. So information about the teas. Now talking about, I talked before about nuts. Eating a handful of pistachios every day can lower blood pressure, so it won't spike when that adrenaline rush comes. It can be very helpful for us. And a word about nuts, really, I think the things to keep in mind about nuts is to choose raw or dry roasted, not those nuts that, are full of other oils or processed with other oils. And also, nuts have high value in small quantity. Nuts are high in fat and also high in calories. So being mindful of, like, this is, a handful of pistachios rather than a whole, half a can or however they come, watching, how many of those we eat. Avocado is another, kind of high-fat food, but it's very, very healthy and nutritious. One of the best ways of reducing blood pressure is to get enough potassium. And half an avocado has more potassium than a medium-sized banana. In addition, guacamole offers a nutritious alternative when our stress causes us to crave a high-fat treat. So again, it's what you mix the guacamole up with and how much of it you allow yourself to consume. Almonds are chock full of helpful vitamins. There's vitamin E that bolsters our immune system, plus a range of B vitamins, which makes the body more resilient during stress. So again, to get the best benefit, at a maximum, a quarter cup is what we look for. So now we're going to ask another polling question 5. Which of the following nuts has, or which of the following nuts, choose one, has the least fat and most protein per ounce? Almonds, pistachios, cashews, or pecans? So let's see what you think about this one. Okay, Brenda?
So we have 23% of participants voting for pistachios, 59% for almonds, 7% cashews, and 13% for pecans.
Okay, so here's another surprise. And I have to say I was surprised as well. Least fat, most protein per ounce are pistachios, followed by almonds, cashews, and then pecans. So it surprised me in two ways, that pistachios had lower fat than almonds and that cashews weren't way high on the list. My husband was very excited to hear that, by the way, that he could eat cashews. The thing about the nuts, again, is quantity. Why pistachios is also really the best choice, is you get more bang for your buck because they're lighter nuts. And so you can eat more pistachios than you could of the others. So all good information, and just tells us that we can always learn something new. Raw veggies. Crunchy raw vegetables can fight the effect of stress in a purely mechanical way. Munching celery or carrots can help us relieve a clenched jaw that can ward off those tension headaches. Crunchy vegetables are a favorite of mine, and I kind of worked hard to turn to raw vegetables in times of stress rather than, high-fat chips. And carrots combine vitamin A with natural sugar that provides a good balance. And the crunch is really a satisfying de-stress. Carbs at bedtime can speed the release of serotonin and help us sleep better. Not a heavy meal, which can cause certainly heartburn and sometimes nightmares. But what we want to do here is stick to a high complex carb, like maybe light toast. I'd be careful of the jam just because of the sugar before bed, but some carb can be helpful before bed to help us sleep. Another bedtime stress buster is that time-honored glass of warm milk. Researchers have found also that calcium reduces muscle spasms, soothes tension, eases anxiety. Lots of magnesium also can help with those, cramps that we may, some muscle cramps that we get. So milk's another good one. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep, warm milk can be helpful. Just a word about herbal supplements, and I have to say that, herbal supplements can be kind of a slippery slope because just because something's natural doesn't make it healthy. And it's unregulated. My suggestion here is to get guidance from a nutritionalist or a naturopath. But there are lots of herbal supplements that claim to fight stress. One, St. John's wort, that was shown to, have benefits for depression and also reduce some symptoms of anxiety. There's less data on valerian root, but it's another herb that's said to have a calming effect. But again, I would be really mindful of this. And I think one thing that we haven't talked about, but that is getting more and more recommended, even by internists and medical doctors, is the importance of vitamin D supplements. It was surprising to me when my regular doctor was asking me how much vitamin D supplement I took. And so it's something that we can look to in a safe way to for the health benefits of vitamin D. So the other thing that we did, this was really a training focusing on food, stress-busting foods, but think about the benefits of combining exercising with stress-busting foods. Nothing like aerobic exercise to increase oxygen circulation, produce endorphins, all that's good things. So, and we know that to get the maximum benefit, 30 minutes of aerobic exercise 3 to 4 times a week is really helpful. So before we get to kind of your question and answers and then the end, we're all going to look at, there's a handout called Superfoods, and I'm going to do my best to open that up. Yeah, oh goody. So now, superfoods to increase brain power is something that we can look to and keep in mind. So these are foods that nourish our body and also help with our mind, help with our brain function, which I found really interesting. So looking at the top, broccoli, which is high in vitamin K and been found to enhance brain function, reduces our the chance of developing age-related dementia. And the vitamin K in broccoli also helps calcium. So these are good things that help with warding off macular degeneration, artery hardening. It's a real good, all good food. We talked about blueberries, not only rich in antioxidants, but also helps with short-term memory and concentration, which is important to keep in mind really at any age. Walnuts are a high-fat nut, but is really high in omega-3 fatty acids. And so just a handful of those improve cognitive function. Tomatoes, the lipozene in tomatoes help maintain optimal brain health and enables our bodies to stave off the impact of damage caused by, what we hear about is free radicals that can damage the brain over time. These oily fishes, what we call the fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, trout, along with fish oil supplements, serve to promote optimal brain health, which are high in the omega-3s called DHA. So one thing that we didn't look at in the slides, but something so important, is water. So the dehydration has a significant impact on our brain function, which of course includes memory, reasoning ability, attention span. Brain can actually shrink when we're dehydrated. So fluids also help flush toxins from the body. And if you're anything like me, if I'm hungry and I have a glass of water, helps fill me up, and is also just makes you feel better, I think. It's a really good thing to keep in mind. Strawberries have good things in it, some I can't pronounce, that have found to cleanse the brain and eliminate those toxins. So it inhibits an array of functions, the toxins that include memory. So caffeine, goes back and forth really from getting a good rap to a bad rap, but it does boost our ability to concentrate and focus, as any of us that have needed kind of a boost can attend to. It also contains antioxidants, which promote all-around brain health. The key here is how much we drink, what time of the day, and knowing our own individual threshold for caffeine consumption. Avocado is another superfood that's high in omega-3 fats and vitamin K, along with 20 other nutrients. So it's really good for us in lots of ways. Spinach, we talked about in the slides, high in lutein, an antioxidant that helps clean toxins from our brain and helps with mental clarity. And beets, which we didn't talk about during the training itself, and beet juice contain a lot of nitrates, which serve to increase blood flow. So, and beets, not the can with the salt and the vinegar or whatever, but fresh beets are really delicious. And another thing that I kind of added to this list that's not here is dark chocolate. And this is a very comforting notion to me, who loves dark chocolate, that it's actually good for you and you feel less guilty. But dark chocolate has antioxidants. It can increase blood flow, lower blood pressure, and it raises the good cholesterol and helps protect from the bad. So I think the research is dark chocolate, 70% and up of the chocolate, and again, watch the quantities on the chocolate so that it's not terribly fattening. So, and we can, I think that list, the superfoods, is maybe you can pull it up too, and if you wanted to print that out and keep it, might be a good thing to have handy. So I hope you found this time valuable. I know you take it out of a busy day, but I hope that there was some information that was new to you. And the whole goal is that we reduce the stress in our lives so that we can enjoy our work and enjoy our family in a more complete way. So we've got a few minutes left. If you have any questions, there's a chat box on your control panel. And if you want to put a question in, then Brenda will feed it to me and I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay, it looks like we have a few questions.
Okay.
So the first one, which foods do we want with the different moods? So angry, crunchy foods, etc. go with which mood?
So I would say the crunchy, I would do carrots, celery, any kind of raw vegetable. If you like even to munch like chunks of raw cabbage, or there are things that you can buy in a bag. I think it's Trader Joe's, called kale sprouts, or something that you roast in the oven, and then it's kind of like it's a nutritious snack. So I would say that for anger. For depression, I would do dark leafy greens, maybe some steamed spinach, or some of the fatty, the omega-3 foods, and or also for anxiety and oatmeal or complex carbs that raise serotonin and then but also stay in our system and help stabilize blood sugar. And then I also think for feeling down and wanting a spike in energy, fruit can help in that way too. And drink lots of water at the same time. I'm a fan of Greek yogurt, and there's some frozen Greek yogurts that for me kind of satisfy. I love the ice cream thing, and so that can be comforting and soothing. Hot cocoa made with a low fat or fat free milk can be comforting and feel kind of like a reward of some way. And I also think that the fact of the matter is that we're all human, and so we're going to do some things in moderation just because we like them, and I think that's okay. It's that our normal habits, the good, mindful, healthy foods are about 85-90% of what we consume.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Our next question is diet soda a simple carb? What about zero-calorie drinks like Crystal Light or light lemonade, iced teas, etc.?
Yeah, you have to watch out. The research on diet soda is bad, just because it's not only the artificial sweetener, but it's the way it's carbonated itself. Supposedly, there was research that it created brain lesions. I mean, that was a kind of a study. But I think if I were going to do that, I'd stay away from the sodas. The vitamin waters that are zero, I'd look at how they're sweetened. You want to try for the most natural kind of sweetener and not the real, the artificial sweeteners. Iced tea, unsweetened iced tea is great. Unsweetened green tea is great. Or if if it needs to be sweetened, an artificial sweetener that is the best for you, if you can say it that way, is stevia. And so that can be helpful. And then, guave has some good research. It's got more calories, but, or a little honey can be good. So, but I think, I love diet soda. I love Diet Coke. Once in a while, I will have a Diet Coke. It's what we turn to on a daily basis that gets us in trouble, I think, in the food arena. Anything else?
Okay. Our next question is, do you have an opinion on taking magnesium powder supplement to help combat stress?
I do. I have an opinion, and it's been recommended. I mean, it was recommended to me by a naturopath, and it's helpful for sleep. What I find is it depends on how much. I mean, I've actually taken magnesium and wake up grumpy, and so that's not the desired effect. But I do think that there's good research. I think it's about, it's real small doses and see how helpful it is. But I do, there is good research on it. And I really do think it also helps muscle cramps, because it's what they say about magnesium is that it's a natural muscle relaxant. And physical therapists have told me that too. So that's my opinion about magnesium. Anything else?
So, yes, we have another question. If you don't like fish, are fish capsules okay?
Yes. Um, yes. I think, and there's lots of research now on, on omega-3s and then krill oil, and there's something else out. But what they also, I think the key there is a really high quality one. I mean, I wouldn't, because you want that fish oil to be really, really fresh. Um, so, and the thing about that also, it's not only good for brain function, but actually fish oil is a good joint lubricant as well. So, and I don't know, you might check me out on this, but my internist told me that Costco's brand of fish oil is really good. So you want to look for a certain amount of the DPA or whatever. There's like 2 categories of the fish oil parts, and it's easy to kind of research that. Anything else?
I have a question about coffee. Are the antioxidants in decaf coffee the same as in full caffeinated coffee?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That would be a good thing to Google. That's a really good question. I know for myself, because I'm caffeine sensitive, I'll make like coffee that I call it half calf, I'll combine it. But that's a good question about that. I really don't know. Anything else?
Does chard have the same nutritional value as spinach?
Chard is in that list of the dark green. I believe chard is in the spinach, kale category. It's a good one.
Okay, and I have one more question. When stressed, what is a good alternative for satisfying the salt craving?
That's a good question. If you crave salt when you're stressed, I guess what I'm wondering if it's a salt like on chips or if it's just salt. A little sea salt's not going to hurt. Something I didn't mention, but that I think is healthy and also it can be satisfying, is air popcorn. And there's some air popcorns out there that have a small amount of salt, low sodium, very little or no fat, and it can be a satisfying stress reducer. And popcorn, it's a starch, but some of it is actually healthy and can be filling and satisfying. And you certainly can crunch when you do that. So that might be something that's helpful. I think it's also training kind of habits. It takes about 3 weeks to change a habit. So maybe when we crave salt, we could change to, a raw vegetable, or maybe an air popcorn with a little sea salt on it might do the trick. Anything else?
Let's see what we have here. Is ginkgo biloba good for brain function?
There's been research on it. I think it depends. I mean, I've tried it. I'm very sensitive to it. I just don't feel well, or I feel wired. And so I think you got to be careful. I think there are some advocates, proponents of it. I'd ask, a nutritionist or a naturopath about it. I don't know enough about that.
We have, do you have time for one more question, Karen?
Of course. Sure.
Okay. So does tea help keep you dehydrated if you don't want to drink water all day?
It's actually, tea is it won't. Tea won't help you. I mean, unless it were an herbal tea. An herbal tea will. But tea, I find it's dehydrating. So I think herbal teas would be great. Any kind of herbal tea would be hydrating. I don't think there's anything quite like just plain water, but if I were going to, want a liquid, then I would go for an herbal tea that's, iced or room temperature or whatever. Yeah. Anything else?
We have one more question.
Okay.
About nuts. Are vitamins lost when I poach raw cashews? I use them to make cream-like soup bases.
I don't think so. I've never done it, but you might Google it. You might do a little research on it, but I don't think so. Because I think the nutrient, really is inside the nut. And it would be, poached fish is still really good. So if we use that as a comparison, I don't think so. I think you're fine there. Good idea, actually.
We have another question just came in.
Okay.
Is there any foods that help with restless leg syndrome with having a desk job because it causes some stress?
So I'd try a banana. It would be what's high in magnesium. So you might, whatever foods, milk might be helpful, or yogurt. But what I would do is I would look for something that is high in magnesium. So it's sounding like you're kind of wanting something immediate, like while you were at work, and that's what I would do. Maybe avocado as well, but I would turn to the high magnesium foods for that. Anything else?
Okay, we have another question that just came in. Is it true that drinking cold water is better for the body than room temperature? I heard calories are burned when you drink cold water because it has to work harder to keep your body at the right temperature.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Actually, the naturopaths say you need to drink room temperature water, not real cold, but that's not probably for calorie burning. That's, I think, just all around a systemic kind of reaction. So I've not heard that. As I say, what I know of what the naturopaths say are that it's room temperature, but that may be true. I'm learning things. Yeah, good questions.
So this one is about allergies. So what are good alternative foods if you're allergic to fish or avocados?
So for avocado, I would say a banana, because they have some similar nutrients. And fish, I would wonder if you could take, fish oil supplements, and I don't know that if your allergy would, cross over into the supplements as well. But there also there's some dark leafy greens that have some of those, benefits of omegas that you might try to do a little research on. But I definitely, I think that the avocado and the banana might be a crossover. Anything else?
We do have another question. When stressed and anxious, my go-to is peanut butter on toast, which is high in fat. Is there a healthier option that is filling but less fat?
Okay. So, and I feel like I'm an advertisement, but Trader Joe's has a peanut butter that is kind of defatted, and it's good. And it's got, I forgot what it is, but the proportion of fat is really, really low. So I would try that. And I also would just kind of, be mindful of how much peanut butter you put on it. And then I would just kind of experiment with some other alternatives, for, maybe whole grain or rice cakes, brown rice cakes, or something that is crunchy and it's also, in the carb family. Or, you might try that alternative peanut butter that Trader Joe's has.
So we have a few more questions. What are the benefits of adding lemon slices to your water?
Okay, so what I know about that is that what that does it evens out alkaline, and there's research about a certain alkaline balance. So what I do is first thing in the morning I'll squeeze half a lemon into a glass of water and drink it. And I would think that the lemon slice is going to, do that alkaline all day. It just is not as available to me as it might be. The other thing, I think there are those that say that lemon water is more hydrating, but I'm not sure if that's true. And I think probably what we should do is maybe just take a couple more, and then you could email me questions if you wanted to do that, since we've gone over. But let's take a couple more.
Okay, so the next question, are Powerades and Gatorades a good source of hydration?
Yeah. I'd be careful of that, just because oftentimes they've got sugars and other things in it. There is one that what is it? It's a light, it's a light version, and it's escaping me right now. But there's also there's an emergent C that has some additives in it that help for hydration, and it's just escaping me right now. But I would watch what's the rest of it in there. There's the Gatorades and those kinds of things. And you can even, kind of just do a little research about that. I think some of the vitamin waters have the substance, the zero vitamin waters have the substance in it that helps. It's electrolyte. That's what I'm searching for. There are some of those hydration waters that help balance electrolytes, which was what gets out of whack when you're dehydrated.
Okay, thank you, Karen. One more question.
Sure.
What about root vegetables like yams, taro, sweet potato? Are these simple or complex carbs?
They're complex. Yeah, they're complex, particularly as far as I know. Yeah. And, they're not low in calorie, but they're extremely nutritious. Extremely nutritious. And I think can make you feel, satisfied, and the vitamins in them give you a sense of well-being, I think. Anything else?
That looks like most of the questions. We will be sending out the link to the archived webinar on the RBH YouTube channel, and also emailing the validation code and the PowerPoint slide deck.
Okay, good. And if there are any, individual questions that you wanted to ask, you can bring those back through as well. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And hopefully, you've got some new tools around healthy eating. Have a good rest of your day.